But before I take you through some of the changes that have resulted, what I do want to do is talk to you about another important element in making the case for change to the chiefs. And this had to do with the personal stories of the women I spoke to during my visits to the ADF bases. So as you saw at the beginning, we travelled to around 60 different military installations. And often on these visits, women would approach me one-on-one, many of them to talk to me about the experiences, the really positive experiences that they'd had in people supporting their flexible work arrangements and other things like that. But I have to say, on occasion, I did hear deeply distressing stories. Personal stories of sexual harassment, bullying and sexual assault. And for many women, they'd never disclosed these stories before. And during some very distressing interviews, it occurred to me that, yes, it was important that as the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, that my team and I heard these stories. But what was more important was that the good men in the organisation who had the power to create change heard these stories. And that they heard firsthand these personal narratives. So not only did they hear the case for change, they were able to feel the case for change. So armed with this intent and aided by courageous women with compelling stories, what I did was arrange for each of the chiefs to spend time standing in the shoes of the most vulnerable. To stand in the shoes of those people who loved the ADF as much as they did, but for whom service had come at an unacceptable personal cost. And I flew in women from all over Australia, many who brought their mothers or other close personal support, so that really the chiefs could hear what extreme exclusion feels like, what it's like to be on exercise for several months when no one speaks to you, what it's like to be sexually assaulted by your instructor, who's the very person you turn to for advice, what it's like to having to face a perpetrator every day even though you've reported his assault to your superiors. And most importantly, what it's like to have your career ruined because you had the courage to make a complaint. So I needed those chiefs, the very men with the power to create systemic change, to really listen deeply, to understand, and most importantly, to feel a deep personal commitment to change. Question is, would it work? I mean, military and emotion are not necessarily words that are sitting very close in a sentence, but I still remember that first face-to-face session, the service chief sitting uncomfortably in his chair, the mother nervously escorting her daughter into the room, a box of tissues in the middle. And the question was where to begin. How would we kick this conversation off? But it was that courageous young woman who turned to the chief and she said, "Sir, I am so very nervous." And the chief replied, "Believe me, I'm scared too." And I thought in that moment, we've really got a chance at change here. It takes an authentic and compassionate military leader to admit that he's fearful about what is about to be told, and to admit that he's prepared to listen deeply and to create change. And most importantly for me as a mother, the chiefs heard the pain of mothers, mothers who had encouraged their daughters into the service, fervently believing that the enemy lay outside, not within. And as one mother said, she said to the chief, she said, "Look, I gave you the person I love most in the world, and this is how you've treated her." And at the end of these sessions, and I have to say without exception, to hear those really senior men stand up and say, "Look, if I could stand in your shoes every day and take away your pain, I'd choose to do that. What happened to you should never have happened in Australia's military. I will do everything I can to make sure it never happens again."